This is Rabbi Sachs. Welcome to the Chai Academy. Welcome to the Chai Center. And welcome to this course of Genesis. So yesterday we began chapter 3, which was the sin, right? The original sin, as it's called. And yesterday we just posed many questions. How the story, hey Susan, how the story just at the surface doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, God warned Adam, and Adam disobeyed God. Eileen, hi. God, right? God created Adam. Adam didn't have peers to lead him astray. Adam didn't have trauma from his parents. And what's going on here? And why would the Torah even bring it up, right? I know it happened, but it's if they could fail, we could fail, right? And they sinned over a fig, right? And blaming this one and blaming that one. So there's a lot to be answered here. So I believe there's three ways of viewing what happened. What happened when Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden fruit? What happened? Now, there is the literal way where we read from the Torah and we have no commentaries, and we will be left with a lot of these questions. The literal way is God told Adam, you can eat everything, but you are not allowed, hey Bonnie, you're not allowed to eat from this one tree. Adam and Eve, it started with Eve. Eve was speaking to the snake coached her, the snake encouraged her, the snake was cunning and deluded her, and the bottom line is that she ate, and she gave to Adam to eat. God was furious, and God kicked him out of the Garden of Eden and said, from now on, your life will not be easy. You're going to have to work hard. You're not going to just be able to pick fruits off trees and have everything you want at your disposal. You're going to have a harder life because you disobeyed me, right? Tit for tat, right? We kind of don't have that tit for tat these days. We do not, right? When God gives us a commandments, and we have many commandments, and we don't do it, we're not struck by lightning. We don't get evicted from our home. We don't all of a sudden get our car repossessed, right? So now we don't. We'll discuss what the snake, etc. We're going to try and put everything in perspective. So this is a very unusual circumstance because, for the most part, God doesn't do tit for tat, because that would actually take away our free will. If every time we did something good, we'd get a reward, and every time we did something negative, we'd get kicked in the pants or kicked out of the Garden of Eden, or this happens and that happens, and all of a sudden we find that our bank has been, there's a deficit in our bank, $1,000 was, and you say, right, we could never sin. But for Adam and Eve, I guess because they were created by God, they didn't have free will like we think, like we do anyway. And they ate from the forbidden fruit. Out. Get out. Get out. So that's a little way. God got upset, and God kicked them out. Mortality was introduced to the world. God told them, for the day you eat, you will die. And sure, they didn't die right then, but they did die. Mortality was introduced. Man was supposed to live forever, right? Every person, every human being was supposed to be like Keith Richards and live forever. Now we just have Keith Richards. When there's that picture, Michelangelo's picture of God and Adam in the corner, is like Keith Richards' picture. And Adam asked God, who is that? And God says, I don't know. He's been it since I was there. I have no idea. So, but we have mortality. except for Keith. So that's the literal way. There is other ways to look at it, and I just want to give you a couple of perspectives. And this is how you'll see that and this is basically will prove a point, that when you read the Torah is written on many, many levels. There are many lessons for us. It's not just only literal, because most of the Torah, if you read literally, you will not understand. So there's another whole wavelength of explanation that is taking place that will allow for us to comprehend it on another level, aside from being literal. Because literal, you can ask a lot of questions. So this, according to Kabbalistic sources, is really the narrative of what happened. There were two souls up in heaven, a male soul and a female soul. God sent them down to this world. And God told them, listen. Not only told them, by the way, this is also us. So it's whatever he told them is for us. They were different, as we'll hear. But God told them, and God told us, I am putting you in the lowest world there is. Right? There is different worlds. There's a world of emanation. There's a world of creation. There's a world of formation. And then there's a world of action. And we are in the lower half of the world of action. And there's other sub-worlds that are going on. And God said, I'm going to put you in the lowest world. And your job is to elevate the world. If God put them somewhere in the middle world and they elevate it, the lower worlds still remain where they are. But if God put them in the lowest world and they elevate everything. So God said, your job is to elevate creation. Your job is to make godliness in the lowest world, and by extension, it will uplift everything to high spiritual, lofty, holy heights. So they accepted the mission. And Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, were created. They come down to the lowest world and they said, okay, what is our job? Our job is to elevate. And they looked around and everything was pristine. Everything was holy, right? And they were puzzled and they asked, what is there to fix, right? What is there to elevate? And they said, wow, everything here is pristine and holy. And they looked around and they said, there's this one tree that we can't partake of, because that one tree, it is forbidden to us. Everything else is permitted to us. But there's one tree that needs elevation, clearly. Right? So Eve turned to Adam and said to Adam, hubby, sweetheart, thank you for taking out the banana peels and the orange peels, right? Taking them out of our little area that we live. He says, you know that God put us in this lowest world, but if there's something there that needs to be elevated, we have to elevate it. So Adam said, Eve, how do you suggest we elevate it? So Eve said, I think we have to disobey God. I think that's the way to do it. And Adam said, oh, no, Eve. God said not to eat it. And he was very firm. And he gave us a lot of warnings. And he said he's going to introduce mortality. Right? And I don't want to eat it. I don't want to touch it. Right? So Eve said, yeah, Adam, precisely what you're saying resonates with what I'm saying. Right? And he says, first of all, God didn't say, if you eat from the tree. God said, the day you will eat from the tree. Don't you find that God is really telling us to eat? So Adam said, this is not cool, Eve. You're asking to do something. We got one command. That's all we have. And we've been here for an hour. And you expect me to dissipate God's voice and God's command, God's wish? Are you out of your mind? So Eve says, you know what? You know what it is, Adam? The way I see it is God is really asking us to choose. We have a choice right now. We cannot eat and live in this pristine life, spiritually vibrant, spiritually alive, where holiness is so thick you can cut it with a knife. Well, God maybe wants us to eat the tree, the fruit of the tree, and thereby eating this fruit of the tree, right? We will die. What does die mean? That we won't have this spiritual, we won't be spiritually alive. We will lose some of that spirituality. So Adam says, you're giving me a headache. Eve says, I thought that's my line. Then Eve turns to Adam. And he says, you know, God is hoping that we'll eat. And Adam says, I don't get it. God told us not to eat. What do you mean hoping we eat? Right? He says, so she said to him, our job is the lowest. But this where we are right now, Adam, is not the lowest. There's a whole nother world out there that's lower than us. And it's the world of mortality. God wants us, I'm telling you, Adam, God wants us to descend into this world where there's mortality, where spirituality is not apparent, and it's not as thick. And we elevate it. Right? So Adam said, I don't know. So Eve said, Adam, think about it. What God has done here, He's taken us to the threshold. He's led us right to here. And now it's up to us to volunteer. So Adam said, but then we're going to die. She goes, and that's the point, Adam. That's the point. So they ate from the tree. No, my voice is strained. I have something with my vocal cords. I have an endoscopy next week. So they ate from the tree. Nowhere does it say in the Torah that God was angry. God, I think, was marveling. God was like, wow. I told them not to. I kind of hoped they would, but I didn't think they could. Right? And he says, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted them to get into the lower world, and the only way they're going to get into the lower world, lowest world, which is where we are now, by the way, is by eating it. So God turned to Adam, and he said to Adam, I'm marveled. I'm amazed. How on earth did you know that you should eat from this fruit? So Adam said, I actually didn't. I actually didn't. It was Eve. She told me to eat from this fruit. So he wasn't blaming her. He was actually giving her credit. God, it wasn't me. I was opposed to this. Right? Yeah, they say, by the way, Eve, Bina Yisera, she had a greater grasp. We see that, by the way, from Sarah, Abraham's wife. She had a greater grasp on spirituality. Eve has a greater grasp on spirituality. And basically, women have this extra, they're spiritually more intuitive than a man. And we see that here. So, God turned to Eve. And he says, Eve, that was amazing. That was amazing. How did you know? So she said, well, the snake told me. The snake said to me something like this, God. The snake said, Eve, you can imagine how the lowest world looks, but you can never experience it until you eat from the fruit. So the snake said, and the snake, by the way, was not a snake on the ground. That was part of the consequence. The snake, before its metamorphosis, right? The the snake was upstanding. It had feet. It could talk, and it could eat. And so the snake was it was erect. It was vertical, not just slithering on the ground. The snake said, look, I'm an intellectual. I'm like you. I'm a human being. And I'm telling you that you can experience something intellectually, but it's nothing compared to experiencing it from life's experience. So Eve said, the snake. Right? So God said, wow. Well, let me tell you, snake, Eve, Adam, right? A major part of me didn't want to do this. A major part of me wanted you to stay in the Garden of Eden together with me. A major part of me wanted you not to have to sacrifice yourself, sacrifice sacrifice your very lives, because they went from immortal to mortal. You also sacrifice your spiritual, because now spirituality is not as clear as it was before you went to the Garden of Eden. But God said, you know what? When you go in the lowest world, it's a war. It's a war against the negativity. It's a war, right? We have to somehow decipher what's good, what's bad. That's what the tree was. Good and bad. Until then, they had only good. So God said, because it was a war, which king, president, right, wants the constituents to go to war? I didn't want you to do it. But just like a king or a president, sometimes you have to go to war. Because sometimes, if you don't go to war, you're going to lose a big battle. And it's not safe. So God said, while I didn't want you to go to war, right, I realized that the right thing happened, and you went to war. So what was the war? The war was that good and evil, right, the world needs fixing. And that's our job. Our job, once again, is to elevate the most mundane, lowest level. And this is, by the way, just following this onto like my life. My life is, I was sent here by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. What was the Lubavitcher Rebbe's thought by sending out thousands upon thousands of couples? The Rebbe said, Crown Heights, it's good. Williamsburg, it's good. Borough Park, it's good. But there are areas where they need somebody to go down and offer up offer up a class, offer up a prayer service, offer up this, that, and the other, kosher food, right? So the Rebbe said, yeah, so while you're sacrificing, while you're not with your parents and your siblings, right? But it's a war. And you got to inspire others, right? And for those that wish to stay in Crown Heights, you got to support the others. You got to support your buddies that are going out. But those that go out is because it's necessary. So he says you got to go, right? And so now you're descending, Adam and Eve, into a whole new world. Right? In this world, there's going to be pain. There wasn't pain in the Garden of Eden. In this world, there's going to be suffering. In this world, child rearing is going to be tough. In this world, you're going to be mortal. Right? You cannot live forever. And God, and by the way, and if you take a look, so God was thankful. Thanks, Eileen. God was thankful that they did it. They stepped up to the challenge. He wouldn't have blamed them if they didn't. If they didn't, by the way, maybe the next generation would have. But they got it right away. Eve got it right away. And they began the mission of perfecting the world. Right? Our job, and there's another whole point to this. Our job is to sift through what is holy, what is not. And we have the Torah to do that. Not ours, once again. Some hypothesize that the sin was that now they became very subjective as opposed to objective. And that's true. In the Garden of Eden, there was no room for subjectivity. In the Garden of Eden, it was very clear. Good, 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 good. This tree, this tree is confused. One tree. Now we come down to this whole world. Our job is to sift bad from good. This is not consistent with proper values and morals. This is consistent with proper morals and values. That's our job. That's our job. That was Adam and Eve's job. Right? And in the Kabbalah, it uses this line, Yerida Letzarech Aliyah, that you go down in order to go back up. And it explains that you go down and you're challenged with spirituality and unholiness combined together, and you win, and you say, no, let's have clarity here. Communism bad, democracy good, and you separate the two as an example, right? And you have clarity. Now, when you pass, the soul goes up to a higher level than it was, because it was able to clarify things. And what's interesting, what I find interesting, is that the word, they call it the chet, Eitz Hadas. The word chet. So Lenny, when you ask the question, why put a tree there they can't eat from? No, that's exactly this whole discussion. This very discussion, God felt bad for them for eating it, but wanted them to eat it. That's the whole discussion. The word for sin, what we call the chet etz hadas, the sin of the tree of knowledge, chet doesn't mean sin. What's fascinating? Chet doesn't mean sin at all. What chet means, it means demotion. Right? It means that I am demoting you temporarily into the lowest world. It doesn't say ovain. Ovain means there's something missing. You caused a deficiency in yourself. Chet means you demoted yourself. So Adam and Eve willingly demoted themselves in order to do what God wants. And that's true, by the way, with all of us. If you think about it, to be a Jew, to keep kosher, you spend more money on meat. You may spend a little money on fish. You spend money on matzahs. You send your kids to Jewish school or Hebrew school. You have to buy tefillin, and you have to have Shabbat and take off work, right? And you got to do this, and you got to do that, etc., on and on and on and on and on. So you could have this money, this $10,000 extra, and you could spend it on another week in Bali. But you don't. You sacrifice yourself. You sacrifice Bali. And you demote yourself from that vacation. And instead, you use it for the matzah and the lulav and the building the sukkah, etc., on and on and on. So we all demote ourselves for the sake of an ascent. We do the right thing. And that's, by the way, religiously and ritually correct. But time and time again, there's things that are not ritually correct that we do because it's the right thing. Nothing to do with ritual, rather. And we do it because this is what's expected of us. So we're actually all Adam and Eve's. All of us. And we learn from the best, and we learn from the brightest. So next time you have to sacrifice something for the sake of God or for the sake of the greater good, whatever it may be, you say to yourself, I'm doing it for you, God. I'm doing it for you. Because that's the battle you want me to be in. I'm doing it for you. You want me to have this battle, right? It's not so comfortable for me, but I'm battling for you, and therefore I'm going to take that $500 and I'm going to buy matzah. Even though I would love to buy a new cell phone. So it answers the questions. By the way, the next time we meet, there's another whole approach to what happened here. And we'll study the consequences, I think, a little deeper. So it answers the questions. We created 1 hour. It was amazing that it was only 1 hour. Right? They didn't defy God. They did, in the end, they did God's absolute bidding. Right? God was saying, I feel bad that they're going to do this for me, but that's what I want. And that's why the Torah brings it up, is because shame, it's not shame. It shouldn't make us depressed. We should be inspired that Adam and Eve ate from the fruit in order to do God's bidding. Right? And it had nothing to do with trauma and birth trauma, etc. And fig, it didn't matter. That didn't matter either. God said, this is the symbol of good and evil being together. And so they ate from it. And they didn't blame each other. They actually honored each other. So that's kind of so today we've studied the literal approach. We went over it. And then we studied the Kabbalistic approach, which I think answers a lot of questions and changes really the dynamic of the Torah. I mean, this is one of the most incredible things that I've learned, is that when you read it, it's on a whole different level. So God had a plan, and he set this plan in motion, and Adam and Eve were right on it, and the credit is given to Eve because she's the mother of all life. The next time we meet, we'll be talking about it from a different perspective. I mean, it's not Kabbalistic, but it does, and there's some crossover. Yeah, of course they became better. They were able to ascend. So we'll be talking about, there's some crossover a little bit, but it just gives you another perspective. And then, of course, we have to talk about consequences. The consequences also from a Kabbalistic perspective and a non-Kabbalistic perspective. So stay tuned for more of Genesis 3, the original sin, and we'll study this together. Are there any questions for now? So if you do have a question, rabbi@thechaicenter.com. If you enjoyed this class, please feel free to share. I think it's worthwhile that people see that Judaism has tremendous depth, and it's not just a story of eating an apple. So I think that's important, and you share something as from the Kabbalah like this that's so shareable. I think it will make other people want to know more. So it's a mitzvah. God bless. Shabbat Shalom. You could always see this class and other classes at thechaicenter.com/academy.